What are the key factors in weighing up a potential product and their anticipated saleability? So just sort of, I guess, weighing up, something a bit edgy versus something a bit safer. And do you have a process of weighing those things up?
I had a little slide up last week at Spa, which had a T-shirt, and I think on one T-shirt it said, "Art, fuck the money," and then the other T-shirt was "Money, fuck the art," and make your choice. And there's somewhere in between there. There are some genres and some pictures and some styles that are commercially absolutely more viable than others. There's no doubt about it. Horror is a difficult genre in this territory. It's a great genre in America. And we usually take, 99% of American films, but it's a difficult subject matter here. So you mentioned edgy. Sometimes when we go horror, it's difficult, be it with the special effects and just particular audience reception to it. There are exceptions to it, be it a Saw or Resident Evils and various other things, but that's difficult. At the end of the day, is the project great? I mean, it's a ridiculous thing, and there are rules and there are some understandings about what ones we don't want to go to and things, but at the end of the day, is it got something that we haven't seen before, is really unique, is a great idea, that's realisable for the production budget that's being suggested, or whoever is attached to it, be it cast, directors and everything else. So, funnily enough, there are some rules that we'd like to follow, the ones that we'd say are principally good commercial judgments that we should rely on, and then at the end of the day we throw that all out and say it's a great film. And I've got to say that Red Hill is doing it tough, but we always loved the film. It broke the rules. It was a little western in some respect. It was a thriller. It had a little bit of horror in there as well. And at the end of the day, we just love the film, and that's a great thing. And I think that's probably sums up. So there are rules, but at the end of the day, damn it, if you love it and it's great, go for it.
Martha, is this something that you look at the development stage at Screen Australia?
I think being a government funding body, we have slightly more freedom to sort of take risks at times. If we think that, Red Hill being an example, we provided some completion money for Red Hill, and for us there was no doubt that was a career launcher for Patrick, and hopefully would perform at the box office as well. But the risky side, if we feel that there are other benefits, if it's going to launch a really strong voice, or and the budget always has to work for that sort of film, but we do take those decisions for films that we think predominantly have a film festival life. We may still fund those. In fact, we're very clear that we have a commercial and a cultural agenda, and a remit. So.
Now, Christopher, as a producer, is when someone approaches you with a project, how do you balance the risk versus the potential of a project?
There are many ways of doing that, and just wanted to say thanks to Al as well. We're still getting checks for Priscilla Quinn in the Desert, so thank you very much. And that
was happy to oblige.
And that certainly was a risky project in its day. There's no doubt about that. So I think it's important to try and understand, as we're going through before, those risk mitigators. Certainly as an organisation, we try to make sure that we go through those traditionals. Yes, there's books and websites that you can go to, but there is no set formula for success, that's for certain. And whether that be around the cast, whether that be around a known story and the type of audience that already understands that story, we go through all those. Then you look at how much it's going to cost to make it right. And Tomorrow in War Began is a great example of where it had been tried to be made so many times, and some doubters were saying it could have been done for about a third or less of what we made it for. And our concern for that, and we'll never know because it wasn't made for that amount, our concern for that was that it was going to miss the audience and people would have been disappointed when they went in to see the film. So it's a real blend of understanding your audience, making sure that you can reach that audience as well, understanding the risks around cast and who's attached to write, how they're known, how you can then package that film, because if you've got all first-timers, it makes it tremendously hard to convince people to put their money in purely on execution risk, let alone the original story. If it's got lots of book sales and you're doing an adaptation, clearly you've got that audience already, but if it's just a story about people that came to a country or people that went for a trip, you've got to be careful around that, because we often have a saying of being familiar but different. It's important to be able to resonate with an audience, but at the same time, you want to have something unique about it. So go back to Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. That was clearly a road trip, but it was pretty unique.
Now, Al, looking at your resume and looking at your filmography, you're clearly a risk taker. So how do you balance the risk versus the potential of a project?
I just decide what I want to do, and then I work out how best to do it. The people taking the risk are partly me because of the time investment and the decision to spend up to several years ploughing the same field. But it's also, more significantly, up to the other people in the equation, the people who are supplying the means by which to make the film, the money. And so I don't, I mean, it's not to say that I don't think about audiences or about how the film is going to come together, what the elements are that are going to make it combust. But I have to go to a lot of people. Every film you start fresh. You know, we don't have any setup here where there is the equivalent of a studio deal where they guarantee to make a certain number of your films over a 10-year period or something like that. You know, you start all over again, no matter what your track record. Every time you decide, I'm going to make this, you have to decide what is the jigsaw going to be in the present world. You know, the one I would have proposed 15 years ago is quite different from the one now. And so I don't, when I say I don't worry too much about, you know, the vagaries of the marketplace and my analysis of it, it doesn't mean I don't think about it. It just means that I have to feel driven to make a movie for one reason or another. And if I'm not driven, I'd just rather not make it, because the ratio of effort to reward is too great in the wrong direction. There has to be some kind of tightrope walk that works out in a way that still allows you some stamina and some enthusiasm and some good judgment. So speaking of judgment, I think judgment is just as important as talent. I think when the two go together, it's at its best. But what I like to do is find writers and directors and writer-directors of talent and supply what I deludedly think is judgment.
Do you think that industry has become more cautious or more pessimistic since the release of Priscilla? Do you see Priscilla being released in the year 2010 as a big mainstream movie and becoming what it became if it had been released in this current environment?
It probably would be a mainstream movie now because it's so, you know, it's bright and in its own way it's romantic. It's got a spring in its step in more ways than one. But I think to return to Stephen's point about distinctive and, if possible, unique elements, that's fundamentally what we all seek, which is either completely original ideas, which are very hard to come by and usually exist only in the minds of the people who have them, and familiar ideas treated in an unfamiliar way. And the latter is usually, you know, taken. It's more easily decodable and perceptible by people who finance films. But you know, there are so many experts now in the market. There's a whole world that guesses constantly what's going to work and what isn't. And I must say I'm more guided by personal taste than by other considerations, even though I recognize them as important. And I join in the conversation. I don't disregard it. I just don't put it first.